たまに生徒さんの英語を聞いてイラッとすることがありますもちろん相手に悪気がないですし、逆に一生懸命に英語頑張ってる姿が素晴らしいと思います。と言っても自然に You had better なんちゃらかんちゃらと言われるとね何にも考えずにネイティブスピーカーとしてはあんまりいい気分にはなりませんね上から目線に近い感じがしますね。なんていうのかな、まあその生徒さんは何々した方がいいよというニュアンスで言おうとしてますけどね。場合にはよりますけど、大体使い方に関しては違ってる方が多いです。でもね、すごくわかります。自分の日本語もそういう風に聞こえる時があるみたいですねどうしましょう。言葉って難しいですね。I'm going to break this down into 4 points: the problem, the reason, the solution, and some example sentences to help us all have a better understanding of how this rather touchy structure actually works. First, let's look at the problem. You had better see this movie. You had better see this movie. Straight out of the gate, this sentence actually doesn't have any big problems grammar-wise. But you have to take into account how a native speaker would feel if somebody said this to them. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, but I learned it in school. This was one of the first expressions I felt comfortable using. That may be true, but I want to take a deep dive on how it should and shouldn't be used. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Hey, you'll never guess where I'm going. If I'll never guess, what's the point in guessing? Humor me, go on, take a wild guess. Zimbabwe. Don't be ridiculous. I'm going to Paris. I went there on my honeymoon. Any recommendations about where to go? You had better visit the Eiffel Tower. I had better visit the Eiffel Tower? What if I don't? What's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. What are you on about? It's just that you said, I had better visit it. Just sounds like something bad's going to happen if I don't. You taking the mickey? No, I'm just saying. That's the way it sounded. You're so fussy about language. I'm just putting it out there. So by using you had better in a situation like this, it can almost sound like a threat. It's not normally used in this way. Even although the grammar seems fine, it's not the most appropriate choice. It might even be kind of irritating. Let's investigate about the reason why. The structure had better implies that if you don't do something, something very bad could happen. It's used a lot for something kind of serious, like when you're giving someone advice about a problem or when someone really has to change their ways. In Japanese, it would probably be something like そうしないとまずいことになるよ. So if you're suggesting something like sightseeing spots, good restaurants, or like a fun movie, it sounds kind of weird. Don't you agree? You had better visit the Eiffel Tower. I had better visit the Eiffel Tower? What if I don't? What's going to happen? So in what cases would we use had better? Well, how about your friend has a big test at uni and he hasn't studied at all? This is the perfect example of how and when to use had better. I've got a big test on Friday. Have you been studying? Nah, I can't be bothered. You'd better hit the books or you'll never graduate. Yeah, you're right. So if he doesn't study, he might not graduate. There are some negative consequences involved. That's the key point here. Negative consequences. Another situation may be something like your friend looks very pale, kind of poorly and you want to give them some friendly advice. I don't feel so good. You'd better make an appointment to see a doctor. Get yourself checked out. One more thing about using had better. Remember, it's always followed by an infinitive verb without the to. A lot of people make this mistake. So don't say, you'd better to go see a doctor. You have to say, you'd better go see a doctor. What's that? You haven't watched all the videos on this channel? You had better watch them. Let's take a look back at the sentence which started this whole discussion. You had better see this movie. Are you starting to get the picture about how funny this sounds? A movie is just for fun. So if you don't get around to seeing it, nothing bad is going to happen, right? 見ないとどうなるの? さあ、どうなるんでしょう? So just a simple should is probably your best bet. You should see this movie. It sounds so much better, and there are no connotations of anything bad happening if you don't watch it. But I do have one more piece of advice for you. A nugget of wisdom. An insightful tip. Don't use should too much. I made a whole video dedicated to this topic a while back. I feel pretty strongly about it. I'll leave a link below. Please watch it if you have time. In fact, you had better watch it. In essence, it just means that if you say should too much, especially when giving advice, similarly to had better, it can get a bit irritating. So that's my sage advice for the day. I'm starting to sound a bit like Yoda in Star Wars.
Overuse the word should too much. Do not.
The guy at the Apple store said instead of replacing my battery, I'd be better buying a new phone. So the guy at the Genius Bar in the store is giving you some good old-fashioned advice. If you just have the battery replaced, your phone will still be an older model. I've got terrible toothache. Is it your wisdom tooth again? You'd better take the afternoon off and get it looked at. So, your wisdom teeth. Most people have 4 wisdom teeth. They either come through or they don't come through. But as we all know, they do lead to overcrowding and some kind of dental issues. So in English, we call them wisdom teeth or wisdom tooth. Why do we call them that? They're called wisdom teeth because this time in life is often associated with greater maturity and the acquisition of wisdom. So the phrase emphasizes the idea that these teeth appear when a person is older and presumably wiser than during childhood when the first molars erupt. My student wants to take a shot at Eiken level 4, so I said he'd better get a Japanese teacher. As I only speak English in my English lessons, I always tell my students' parents that a Japanese teacher is best for Eiken. It's a completely different thing from what we offer in our English conversation lessons. Do you think I should get an electric vehicle? I want to try and do my bit for the environment. So I'm definitely thinking about changing to an electric vehicle at some point in the future, but maybe not yet. So to do your bit for something is like to do your fair share, or like to do something which seems like you're helping people to do your bit. So you can do your bit for the community, do your bit for the team, or do your bit for something like the environment. I'd better finish up this video. It's getting late and it's time to head off to the land of Nod.